Could you imagine going on stage or doing a presentation or a teaching or a live stream? And when you're complete, you feel satisfied, you feel good about the way that you showed up rather than immediately going into self criticism. Can you imagine if you got off a stage or you completed a presentation, a teaching, a live stream, a performance? And the experience that you were having inside of yourself, the internal dialogue that you were having inside of yourself was thoughts of optimism rather than questioning and wondering, was it good enough? Am I good enough? Did I do good enough? Can you imagine if you were to get off a stage and you felt really good about the way you showed up, but also you were eager to see how you could improve or how you could do better? Can you imagine before you were to get on stage, before you were to do a live stream, before you were to show up and do a presentation or to have a performance or a teaching, and you were really anchored inside of your body and you were in the zone rather than all in your head battling with imposter syndrome and self-doubt? That is the conversation we're going to have today, is about feminine leaders battling with imposter syndrome. It's a conversation that has been reoccurring for years, and I wanted to bring my unique take on this and what I believe is happening when I see brilliant, accomplished spiritual women having these moments with themselves where they are plagued with self doubt, where they are plagued with self criticism, where they are plagued with thoughts and feelings of, am I good enough? Was that good enough? Am I worthy? And what is happening so that you can transcend this experience and show up with this place inside that feels centered, that feels calm, that feels regulated, that feels confident, that feels embodied. And it feels good to even be here saying that because that's how I feel right here, right now, as I'm speaking to you. And once upon a time ago, there was a time where I would get on a stage, where I would do a presentation, where I would do a teaching, where I would even click the button to do a live stream, and I could hardly hold myself together. I would be in near panic. I would feel so anxious, so riddled with self doubt and am I good enough that I could hardly even get the words out that I really wanted to say, that I knew that my soul came here to express inside of my message, inside of my work. And it's been through this process that I've led myself through and I've led other powerful, accomplished spiritual women through that has supported us to break free from that so that we're able to show up and lead in our God given missions, do what we've been called and created to do without all of that icky, sticky, unnecessary self judgment, self shame, self criticism is so unnecessary. And so first, I want to talk about what it really means to be embodied in your feminine essence, because for some of you listening to this, this could be a term or a concept or a phrase that is foreign to you. And for some of you, it could be so redundant because you've heard it before that maybe you're already tuning it out. And so if you're already tuning it out, I invite you back. Come back. Bring your awareness back. Bring your presence back. Bring your consciousness back. Be here, be now with me. And let's have this conversation. And so when we look at being in your body, what does that mean to be in your body? Well, what this looks like is you're not living in your head. What this means is that you're present. What this means is you have this felt sense of your sensations in your body. And when we're thinking about what does it mean to be embodied in your feminine essence, now we're looking at you being a feminine essenced being, and you are connected to that aspect of yourself, and you have not suppressed it. You have not shoved it away in a closet somewhere. You are really connected to this part of yourself that brings forth this unique quality that is very magnetic, this aspect about yourself that causes people to want to be around you, that causes people to want to get to know you, that causes people to even want to work with you or invite you into their platforms and stages or rooms or what have you. It's this quality about yourself that feels, that feels good. And for some, your beloved, that feels like home. But we're not going to talk about feminine love on that. I talk about that on another day. Today, we're going to stick it to feminine leadership. Now, another aspect of being in your body is this quality of having this sense of calmness, being regulated in your central nervous system, of being connected to your authentic core. So many modern day high achieving women are disconnected from this part of themselves. They're disconnected from their core, they're disconnected from their essence. They have taken on these ways of being, these habits, these patterns, these behaviors that have helped them to get to where they are thus far. It's helped you to succeed. It's helped you to accelerate into next levels. It's helped you to accomplish and achieve a lot of things. It's helped you to even get some accolades. However, there is this aspect of disembodiment that can start to happen where you start to over identify your self-worth, your self-image with things outside of yourself, where you start to over identify with your sense of self with things outside of yourself, meaning you're so attached to the success, the accolades, the achievements, the accomplishments, giving you a sense of meaning, that you are now disconnected from this authentic part of you, this feminine essence part of you, that really is what makes you you. And you may find yourself leading with your accolades, leading with your achievements, leading with your successes, rather than leading with you, because it's you that gets you in the room. It's you that gets people wanting to work with you. It's you that gets people wanting to know you. It's you that makes people want to be around you. And when you're disconnected from that in yourself, then it will be mirrored back to you by other people really not wanting to maybe collaborate or wanting to connect or wanting to invite you into the room. And so it's important to be aware of yourself. And what does that look like for me to be connected to my body? What does that look like and even feel like to be in my body, to feel regulated? What does that feel like in my body to have a regulated central nervous system? What does that feel like to be connected to my authentic essence? What does that feel like to feel calm, centered, and grounded? What does that feel like? Now, part of what I believe takes us out of that state of being is when you are doing what I call overthinking and under feeling or under being, meaning you're living in your head. You're living in your linear logical mind. You're in this constant state of needing to know the next move, the next step, the why, always having to assess and analyze, always having to be in control. And when you're always living in your head, there is no awareness of your body. There is no awareness of what's happening below the neck. And you're not just the neck up, you do have a body. And there's a lot going on down here in the body that does affect the brain. Now, another issue is when you start comparing yourself to other people. I've worked with a lot of high achieving women who are comparing themselves to their colleagues or their competitors. And this is a sure sign that you're living in your head. And this also feeds and fuels imposter syndrome. And so if you're comparing yourself to your colleagues or you're comparing yourself to your competitors, wondering if you measure up to them or if you measure up to be better than them, or are you just as good as them? You are not present with yourself. You're not connected to your own gifts. You're not connected to your own skills, which is the next point of being so connected to your own gifts and your skills that you're centered in that and you're connected to that. And you know, as the scripture says, that your gifts will make room for you. But when you're comparing yourself to your colleagues or your competitors, and you are living in your head, overthinking, under feeling, under being, and you're disconnected from your unique gifts and the authenticity that you bring to the world, then you're fueling and you're feeding that concept that they call imposter syndrome, which is really this notion that you are second guessing and doubting yourself. Now, there was a time in my journey where I would be invited to speak on stages. I still get invited to speak, but I want to talk about when I dealt with that, because I think that'll give you some context of how was I able to go from that to this? Because here we are, I'm on this platform having this conversation with you, and I feel very calm. I feel very regulated. I feel very connected to my core, my center, and I don't feel how I used to feel. Now, in the past, I would get on stage or I would do a presentation or a teaching or even a live stream. And inside, I was riddled with anxiety. Inside, I was riddled with self doubt. Inside, I was riddled with this constant self criticism and questioning. Is it good enough? Is it good enough? Am I good enough? Am I good enough? And what was interesting is the feedback I would always receive from the people who were on the receiving end of my talks, of my presentations, of the work that I was doing was I would get a standing ovation. And I mean, I was a keynote speaker standing on stages in front of hundreds of people, standing ovations. I would have people come up to me in tears about the impact that what I shared had on them and how they were forever changed. I would have people who would come up to me, executives of organizations and companies and CEOs, telling me how they were changing their policies because of what I said. Yet at the end of those talks, at the end of those presentations, at the end of those speaking engagements, I was still suffering inside, wondering, was it good enough? Was it good enough? I couldn't receive the feedback. I couldn't receive the praise and the compliments. I couldn't receive it. And a big part of that was because I didn't feel worthy to receive. And so I believe part of what causes feminine leaders to have this challenge with self doubt and crippling self doubt is there's this part of you that is still not feeling worthy to receive the clients, to receive the opportunities, to receive the validation, to receive the praise, to receive the clients, to receive whatever it is that comes on the other side of you showing up. There's somewhere inside where you still don't feel worthy to receive. And when you don't feel worthy to receive, it puts this invisible filter over your perception where you start to see yourself through the lens of unworthiness. And over time, you start to operate in these patterns, in these perceptions, and in these paradigms that can turn into self sabotage. And you can find yourself either not showing up or not showing up in your full power, your full potential, your full boldness, your full authenticity to really give a life changing, impactful talk, teaching, performance. You can find yourself canceling. I've worked with people and I've done it myself who would actually cancel speaking opportunities because of this, who wouldn't show up and do the live stream, who wouldn't show up and do the talk. And so it can turn into self-sabotage. Now, where do these patterns, perceptions, and paradigms come from? Well, I believe they come from a lot in childhood experiences where there were certain needs that you had that were not met. And because there were certain needs that you had that were not met, you started to show up in your life, throughout your life, in ways that over time were self-sabotage. And it's this unconscious way to get these needs met. And it's so interesting how the brain works. It's so interesting how the brain will start to seek ways to take care of itself and go into these survival mechanisms and these survival patterns. And it turns into a form of self-sabotage. And so what we want to do instead is to allow yourself to be present with what those experiences that you had that cause these patterns and perceptions and paradigms without the self-judgment and without the self-shame and without the self-criticism. This is the hard part for modern day high achieving women. Because for a part of your journey, you've probably created success off of criticizing yourself, being hard on yourself. But you will reach a point where that's no longer sustainable, where now you're going to have to ascend that, transcend that, so you can ascend to this more self-actualized version of yourself that is showing up and you're not in all this stress and inner chaos. And that is possible. In order to rewire this, you're going to have to learn how to be more compassionate to yourself. You're going to have to learn how to give yourself what you did not receive. And at first, this will seem foreign for you because it is foreign. It's foreign when you haven't received what you needed and you're not quite sure what that looks like. It's foreign to have this inner dialogue with yourself in a way that is completely foreign to you. And you're not sure what that looks like because maybe you didn't have a nurturing mother. Maybe you had a mother who did not provide emotional safety or emotional nurturing. Maybe you had a mother who emotionally neglected you, emotionally abandoned you. And so all that's familiar to you is emotional neglect, emotional abandonment. And those are the patterns that you have taken on for yourself. You now abandon thyself. You now neglect thyself. And so when you're experiencing these concepts called imposter syndrome of this excessive self-doubt, then a part of you is starting to be really critical of yourself, questioning yourself, doubting yourself, because that is what's familiar to you. That is all you know how to do. You haven't learned another way, but there is another way, the feminine embodiment way. The way where you know how to be kind and gentle and nourishing and compassionate towards yourself. The kind where you know how to be with yourself in such a way where you are not allowing the past to recreate itself. And that is the work that I do. Holding space and supporting accomplished spiritual women through a plethora of beautiful approaches to rewire these patterns, these paradigms, and these perceptions so that you are permanently removing these self-sabotaging patterns and you're showing up in your life, in your relationships, and your leadership in this beautifully powerful, aligned way and experiencing intimacy, impact, and income without sabotaging it. That is what's available for you. That is what's possible for you. But it begins by you pausing in the moment where you want to self-sabotage and start criticizing yourself and being hard on yourself and judging yourself and shaming yourself, and decide, not this time. I'm not going to do that to myself this time. Instead, I'm going to have a different conversation with myself. I'm going to have a new inner dialogue with myself, and I'm going to begin to have a different relationship with myself. So that when I step on stage or I do this talk or I do a teaching or a presentation or a live stream and I'm complete with it, I'm actually feeling quite good about myself for the simple fact that I showed up. And I know I did my best. And so I hope that this inspired you to shift your relationship with how you're showing up inside of the work that you do. And if you find that you would love support with being more embodied in your feminine essence, then reach out and we'll share ways that how I can support you. Thank you for being here.